Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're tackling an absolute giant of a topic today, one of the most fascinating and honestly frustrating mysteries out there right now, the mystery behind the Pentagon's UAP disclosure. If you've been following this, you know the government has been slowly, very slowly, cracking open the vault. They just recently dropped their 5th batch of UAP files. But as we're going to see, handing us a stack of files, yeah, that is definitely not the same thing as handing us the truth. So here's the magic number for this latest drop, 41. The Pentagon delivered exactly 41 documents to the public. Now, on paper, literally, releasing 41 official government files about UAPs sounds like a massive win, right? It sounds like they're finally pulling back the curtain. But we've really got to look closer at what's actually sitting in this stack they've handed us. Because out of those 41 documents, a staggering 95% of it is just noise. The source material actually refers to these 39 files as filler. It's essentially confetti. Think about that. Only 2 of these files, just 5% of the entire drop, actually represents the signal, meaning they contain significant, world-altering information. You can't just let someone hand you a giant stack of paper and call it transparency. We have to demand the actual truth. We deserve to know the difference between real disclosure and a total distraction. All right, Section 1, Signal versus Noise, the 2 files that matter. Now, what's really interesting about this slide, with the undeniable contrast we're looking at, we've got hard, empirical data standing right next to the human element. One of the genuinely significant files details an Air Force gunship crew's sensors picking up objects that simply do not fly like anything we've ever built. We're talking about incredibly advanced military sensors, tracking literally impossible physics. And then, right alongside that, you have this documented pattern of eyewitness accounts. These aren't just isolated one-off incidents. These accounts keep showing up decade after decade from highly credible people who have never even met each other. When top-tier sensor data backs up decades of unconnected eyewitness patterns, that is real. That's the signal. Moving on to Section 2, the transparency illusion. This setup right here brilliantly illustrates the core of the frustration. Sure, we might get a random video, a heavily redacted document, a stray witness statement, or a super vague press release promising more to come, but look at what's completely missing: the context. Nobody is telling us what the investigation actually found. We don't even know if the case is still open. We definitely don't know who's actively working on it. They toss us these raw, isolated data points, but totally withhold the connective tissue that would actually make any sense of it all. Which brings us to a really powerful analogy from the source material. Throwing isolated videos and files at us without any context, that's not transparency. That is a magic trick. The whole setup is just a massive misdirection. What's the #1 rule of a magic trick? Look over here so you don't see what I'm doing over there. That is exactly what this 41 document data dump feels like. So how exactly does this magic trick get pulled off? Let's trace the information flow. Step 1, the president orders the release of the information. And to be totally fair, the source believes the president genuinely does want the truth out there. But then we hit Step 2. Somewhere between the Oval Office and the files landing on a public website, an unknown middleman, a gatekeeper, steps in. They are the ones deciding what we get to see and what stays locked up in the vault. And finally, Step 3. The public gets this highly filtered disclosure. The giant red flag here? We have no idea who that middleman is. That complete lack of accountability should bother all of us, no matter what you think is flying around up there. Section 3. The Whistleblower Catch-22. Now, recently there was a presidential directive that lifted the gag order on folks who might actually know something. Basically, government employees who had signed super strict non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, can finally come forward with UAP information. And supposedly, they can do this without losing their security clearances or facing legal consequences. After 79 years of intense lockdown secrecy, letting whistleblowers speak sounds like a monumental step forward, right? Well, here is the massive catch. These brave whistleblowers are only allowed to talk to the exact same people who have been controlling the narrative this entire time. As the source perfectly puts it, that's not opening a door, that's moving the lock to a different room. You're telling people they can speak, sure, but only to the very gatekeepers heavily invested in keeping the secrets in the first place. It is a literal catch-22. Section 4. The ultimate tech race. So we have to ask why. We're really looking at 2 potential motives for the secrecy here. It could just be standard national security, governments keeping secrets to protect their citizens, the usual stuff. But there is a much more fascinating, insanely high-stakes possibility: the tech race. Is someone intentionally bottling up this information just to get a head start on reverse engineering world-changing technology? And when we say world-changing, I mean we are not exaggerating. Look at the UAP flight characteristics documented in that Air Force gunship file we talked about earlier. These objects move with zero engine noise. They produce absolutely no exhaust. They defy basically everything we understand about physics. Just think about the implications of having that kind of knowledge. If one country figures out how to replicate that tech first, it changes absolutely everything on this planet. Literally everything. Whether it's little green men or just highly advanced physics, securing a complete monopoly on that kind of tech, that is a very real, very powerful motive for absolute secrecy. Which brings us to Section 5, demanding real disclosure. It all comes down to this core argument. We need to stop throwing the word transparency around if there's no actual substance behind it. Yes, after 79 years, things are slightly better. But we cannot just accept a hollow document dump as a victory. True disclosure demands context. It requires the government to actually put context around what they are saying, and just as importantly, to be totally honest with us about what they are not telling us. We deserve way better than magic tricks and filtered data. And that leaves us with this final, monumental question to ponder. As we keep pushing for real answers in this whole UAP mystery, we really have to ask, who exactly is this unknown gatekeeper operating in the shadows, controlling this flow of information? And maybe even more importantly, what happens to our world, our economy, and our future when this gravity-defying, exhaust-free technology is finally understood? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll see you next time.